So while we're waiting for people to join, I will just welcome you all to the Citizen Science for Adaptive Water Management session here at COP27. Welcome to you all. And just to briefly introduce the agenda for today. So basically, we're going to start with some opening remarks from Abu Amani, who is the Secretary of the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program. We'll follow then with an introductory presentation on the role of citizen science in water resources management by Anthony Greenspan, who is the chairholder for the UNESCO Chair on Open Water Science and Education. And then we'll continue with 4 innovative case studies presentations from the UNESCO Water family, and specifically highlighting the lessons learned from those case studies. And we'll go over a set of activities going from Latin America, over Asia, but also looking from a distance about lessons learned of citizen science, going into the importance of integrating local and indigenous knowledge for climate resilient water management through citizen science as well. And then, of course, also some citizen science example from the Southern African region. And then we'll finalize with some questions from your end. So please, if you have any questions, drop them in the Q&A box and we'll pick them up from there. And we finalize with some closing remarks by Gert Verreet, who is a focal point from the Flemish government, Belgium. So we're just seeing that we have quite a few participants now joining. So I think we can start with the opening remarks from Abu Amani, the Secretary of the UNESCO Intergovernmental Hydrological Program. Abu, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Koen. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and thank you for making time to participate in this side event on citizen science for adaptive water management. The stakeholder consultation meeting on the UN 2020 Water Conference, which was organized last October, has clearly recognized and stressed the critical importance of science in addressing more and more complex interrelated water challenges for a transformation towards sustainable development. An IPCC-like mechanism for a global science-based assessment in line with open science and citizen science was considered as a potential game changer for the conference. UNESCO is committed to mobilize all the scientific community and stakeholders and put all their effort to translate the proposal into an action plan. UNESCO's recommendation on open science, as you know, approved last year during the 41st UNESCO General Conference, acknowledged that more open, transparent, collaborative, and inclusive science improves the quality and impact of science, and thereby the reliability needed for robust decision-making. Citizen science as scientific activities in which the general public participate to some degree is receiving increasing attention to support adaptive water management through voluntary participation of citizens in scientific research and data collection in association with scientific institutions. There is a rapid development of citizen science in the water sciences, with increasing public involvement in monitoring water resources, climate variables, water quality, and in mapping and modeling exercises. UNESCO's Intergovernmental Hydrological Program, as you know, we are putting in place, implementing the 9th phase on science for a water secure in a changing environment, will seek to promote strategies and activity that encourage the contribution of open and citizen sciences for hydrological research. Trusted science, accessible to all, together with solidarity and engagement of citizens, are needed to mobilize knowledge, provide pathways to accelerate progress, and address current and emerging challenges beyond 2030. So today's session will explore, as already highlighted by Koen, it will explore lessons learned so far in the implementation of citizen science applications, and will discuss conditions for their replication and upscaling. We'll have a keynote on the role of citizen science in water resource management which will set the stage, and then some presentation of case studies coming from the UNESCO Water family. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the speakers and panelists for their valuable contributions. By ending, I would like also to thank our partners who joined force with us in organizing this side event, namely the UNESCO Chair on Open Water Science and Education, Vrije University from Brussels and in Belgium, and also the Imperial College of London, the United Kingdom. Our appreciations, of course, to Flanders for the financial support. I would like finally to thank all my colleagues who have worked tirelessly in putting all this together. So I wish you a fruitful exchanges. Thank you. Back to you, Kun.
Thank you so much, Abu, for those opening remarks. And just as you highlighted, we're now entering the 9th phase of IHP. And in that phase, citizen science is actually getting a quite prominent role. And I think also renewed impetus for action. And I think we're also happy to get here on board today Ms. Anne van Greenspan, who is the lead for the output in working group 1 of IHP 9, which is basically focusing specifically on citizen science. So I would like to give the floor to Anne van Greenspan, and as well congratulating her again for a recent nomination as the chairholder for the chair on open science and education. Thank you so much, and the floor is yours, Anne.
Okay, thank you, Koen, and welcome to everybody. And I'm honored to give an introductory talk on the role of citizen science in water resources management. I would like to also thank my co-authors who contributed with materials, Katoria Tisolan, Abdella Touhafi, and Jonas Lembrechts from the University of Antwerp. Okay, so as already mentioned, we see a strong increase in the use of citizen science for water resources management, and definitely a strong increase in agriculture. In many irrigation or precision agriculture projects, we see the use of small sensors and communities, farmer communities, getting involved in monitoring and management of irrigation schemes through citizen science techniques. But we also see it in other domains. For instance, ecosystem services and water quality is a domain where we see that there is a growing interest also in involving the public in appreciation of the services, as well as in the monitoring of the functioning of the systems. And of course, a very strong increase we also see in the floods and droughts, which is also one of the elements that I will use as an example in my presentation. With the citizen science as a topic in both management aspect, as well as we see it appearing in science, we see that there is a growing development of techniques supporting citizen science. And one of the techniques that we definitely will see in examples today are Internet of Things sensors, which are often also developed in such a way that they are cheap, because we often need a lot of them. This is also a big difference with the traditional monitoring. But we also see an increase in the training, because we often need to train people in either building these sensors or using these sensors. Another element that we see nowadays growing very fast is the use of mobile phone technologies. We know that nowadays everybody, or in the whole world, has access to mobile phones, nearly everybody. We are very close in getting a very broad spread of mobile phones. All these techniques, of course, produce data. And there we also see a growing need in the development in the data management, in the repository, but also for long-time storage. This brings me to sustainability, where we notice that successful projects need to involve the local capacity and potentially also further build the capacity in the use of citizen science. And last but not least is the very importance in reaching out people, and the social media as well as the conventional media have been involved in many of these projects. And that brings me also of a project which has been implemented in Belgium with the collaboration of a newspaper, a national newspaper, coordinated by the University of Antwerp. And the project was called Curious Noses in the Garden. So it wants to follow up how gardens respond to extremes of climate change, such as heats, droughts, but also flood events. So it's a large project where they have been using cheap sensors to measure temperature and soil moisture in the gardens. And this has been implemented for 5,000 places in Flanders. And with the Internet of Things, we allow for real-time data transmission, which is then used to better manage the gardens, because it is clear that how people use the gardens, how they design the gardens, how the architectures forming the gardens have an important role in mitigating heat waves and droughts, as well as flooding events. I will just show an example. Here you can see the temperature measurements all over the gardens. And you see that gardens which are in the city, for instance, in the city of Antwerp here, are much warmer than gardens that are located in a more green environment. In this figure, I show you the soil moisture observations for 2 years. 2021 has been a year of extreme flooding, with many people being killed. 2022 was last summer and has been an extreme year in drought. And here we can also see in the figure that the black line measured far more higher soil moisture observations compared to the blue line, which is the year of the drought. So all these extremes are also observable through these sensors with a spatial spread. All right, so we see a lot of developments, but I would also like to highlight where I see the chair of open water science and education playing a role. We want to play a role in collecting the data, and with this, filling the gap. And here I give one example, which is a water quality sensor that we want to implement with partners all over the world to collect water quality data. Water quality data is an important gap all over the world. And we want to collect with this through our Open Water Network platform, where we have a specific section that is going to be built further on citizen science and Internet of Things, where we also want to reach out to partners who are using the sensors or who are interested to use the platform. We have been using it also for education. And finally, and this is very important also in the context of this session, we want to link citizen science to water resources management. And this is also going to happen through the new project on addressing hydroclimatic variability through citizen and open science. This project is coordinated by UNESCO-IHP and has been receiving support from Flanders. So in this project, we aim at one side to elaborate the use of citizen science, the use of Internet of Things sensors, but with a strong link to the CRIDA approach, the Climate Risk Informed Decision Analysis tool. And with this, we want to help communities to be more robust against extreme climate change events going to happen in the future. And with this, I want to thank you all, and I wish a good session with fruitful discussions, because I think that the exchange of knowledge in citizen science is very important. We see lots of developments that have been happening bottom up, but I also believe that even though every case is different, we can learn a lot from each other. And I hope that this will also happen during this session and in future collaborations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anne. And indeed, to paint a bit of a picture of the opportunities and the background on citizen science that we can use to really kickstart this work that you highlighted, but also to see if this can be a starting point for the working group on citizen science, which we would like to put in place under the IHP 9, under also your coordination. So thank you so much for that. And I would like to go in a few innovative case studies which already have been developed over the last few years, just to give a bit of a flavor of what's happening in the UNESCO water family, and to see if we also can start from there, expanding to other regions, and see if we can upscale some of those lessons learned. So I would like to start with the first presentation from Katia Perez on behalf of the Imperial College of London with their technologies for community-based hydrological monitoring from Peru and Nepal. So Katia, if you're there, the floor is yours. You may have to unmute. We can't hear you yet.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, and good day for everyone. I am presenting the Hydrological Monitoring of Andean Ecosystems Initiative, IMEA, a long-standing inclusive monitoring network that has been using citizen science and new technologies for adaptive water management. And by doing this, I will use, sorry, I cannot pass.
We can see it. You may just go for full screen.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I will use three main ideas for this presentation. First, why this initiative started, then how our methodology is inclusive, and finally, what are the results that we have had so far. The rural mountainous region of the Andes in South America hosts diverse and often vulnerable social and hydrological systems, which are currently difficult to assess since there is a severe lack of hydrometeorological data, limiting our understanding of hydrological processes. This means, for example, that it has been difficult to know how land use changes in the highlands have an influence on our water availability, or how effective are being some of the water conservation measures undertaken there. These are common interests among scientists researching the region, but also to local communities living there and decision makers seeking for water security. This is why in 2009, a group of academic and non-scientist institutions from the whole Andean region created the IMEA. In order to make our initiative inclusive, the methodology needed to be simple and adaptable, so our diverse partners could support it, implement it, and of course, understand it. There are two main aspects of our methodology that help in this process. First, we use two small nearby catchments with different land uses. One of them, a more preserved area with as much natural land cover as possible, and the other with an anthropogenic land use change. This allows us to have simultaneous visual and numeric data of land use change. The second characteristic of our methodology is that we use equipment that provides data of sufficient quality. The minimum variables that we monitor are precipitation and river flow. And another important characteristic of our methodology is that it needs to be affordable. We are working in a developing region. So that's why some of our partners have been researching on new technologies that help in this process. They have already developed low-cost sensors using Arduino technology. several of our sites already are using this equipment. And I will show you some of our results. And by doing so, I will explain how our diverse partners get involved and benefit from the network. We are so far 31 diverse partners. 65% of them are non-scientists, and all of them working together to generate good quality data. The academic partners supports the network by giving scientific guidance in the data collection process, data management, and data processing. In return, they have good quality data to create and publish academic papers. Among our decision makers, we have local NGOs, water companies, governmental institutions, or even international organizations. They are in charge of implementing the monitoring or co-funding our data collection process. In return, they have scientific evidence that they are using to support their work on the field. But they don't only have, not only have data, they also have tools and methodologies to evaluate their actions. Finally, but very important, the local communities in these areas, they support the network by allowing the installation of the equipment and the monitoring in their land. Moreover, they are step by step getting more involved in the monitoring process. In return, the scientific knowledge has been translated to information that they can understand and use. By doing this, the network also contributes to their education, and we are also contributing to their water management. Since they have a visual and tangible display of how the land use change is influencing in their water availability. The two pictures that you see here were taken the same day. This is in a community in Cochabamba, Bolivia. And the person that you see there is the president of the, well, was the president of the community. Just as a summary, this has been a win-win experience for over 10 years. We are currently working in 6 countries in the Andean region: Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and Chile. And we are currently monitoring 59 catchments, evaluating land use changes. If you need any further information, we will be happy to receive your email. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Katia, for your introduction on the work you're doing on IMEA in Latin America, specifically the Andean countries. And I would like then to go to the next presentation from the IHE Delft, which is taking a bit more of a generic view on the importance of citizen science for water management and really looking at different lessons learned from practice. So, Jutta, if you're there, the floor is yours. We can't see you.
Yeah, but you should see my screen. You should be able to see and hear me now as well. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you also for the kind invitation to be part of this interesting session. Indeed, I would like to outline some of the emerging best practices in how we can use citizen science in water management. What I'm sharing with you is not one single project, but my decade-long experience of citizen science for water management, which I've gained working in Europe, in Africa, in the Middle East. And primarily, I'd like to offer you my perspective as a social scientist, where I work in these projects in many different roles. We call them action research projects because we're trying to trigger changes and at the same time try to learn and reflect on the experiences so that we can derive theoretical and methodological insights of how we can use citizen science for water management even better. So let me dwell on just a couple of aspects here. So of course, citizen science is about science, but too often that's being reduced to data collection only. And I'd like to highlight the fact that citizen science allows us to involve members of the public in any step of the scientific method and not just data collection. And in fact, in many or in all steps of the scientific method. So that's a point we've seen too often, citizen science being reduced to data collection only, but the potential is to involve the public in any step and therefore really use the awareness raising potential of citizen science. Citizen science is clearly related to environmental management or in water management in our particular case, because it brings together different stakeholders, not only to monitor what's going on in water bodies with respect to water quantity, water quality, etc., but really to raise awareness, particularly of members of the public, but also the other stakeholders, scientists from different disciplines, policymakers from various walks of life and different overlapping policy areas. It also provides us the potential to actually have very innovative forms of stakeholder engagement. And the water sector has, of course, traditionally been very good with stakeholder engagement. Here's yet an opportunity to step that up even further. And last but not least, some forms of citizen science even provide us the potential to trigger behavior change, which we need so badly in order to move and transition into a sustainable world. So you may not be surprised that I make the case that citizen science is actually not about data, but it's about people. And so it's not only about monitoring, but it's involving people in new ways and fostering relationships and providing opportunities for stakeholder interactions that we haven't had in this way before. At the same time, when we say citizen science is about people, we also have to realize that these people have different motivations, and they don't all stand in a row and in a queue waiting to be invited and to be part of citizen science. Their motivations can be quite diverse, and we have quite some competition for attention when we try to involve different members of the public in citizen science. So citizen science then also comes in all shapes and sizes. It does have this monitoring component of environmental monitoring, water monitoring, through either explicit or implicit data collection by citizens. At the same time, there are also other forms possible where we really talk more of cooperative planning, where we use these new forms of stakeholder engagement in new forms of consultation, more substantive feedback and discussions. And then, as we might argue, the more advanced form is actually true environmental stewardship, where we're really jointly governing the environment, and we have realized dialogues between diverse stakeholders and actually a shared responsibility for the environment. But citizen science is about stakeholder dynamics as well. I mean, as we know from our work in water management in general, when we bring stakeholders together, life doesn't necessarily get easier. Citizen science allows us in the most advanced forms to bring together citizens, scientists from all kinds of fields, data aggregators, sometimes commercial ones, water authorities, policymakers, decision makers. So water management doesn't become easier, it often does become effective, but it's sometimes this form of adopting citizen science and water management raises more questions than it gives us answers. So who decides what gets measured in the first place? And when we try to link the data to policy decision, what counts as evidence in those policy discourses? And how does that evidence count? And who even decides how that evidence counts? So these are some of the governance related questions that citizen science actually raises and triggers, rather than merely providing solutions for data gaps. So citizen science, therefore, is also about process. We've established this multi-stakeholder, but it's also multi-dimensional, because it's really important to consider, well, who's really leading this initiative? There are many forms. Some are bottom-up, some are top-down, some are in between. And therefore, it also matters how we bring the different dimensions that are involved when we try to implement citizen science together. It's not just about the thematic focus. We need to take the socio-political context into account. We have different scientific expertise that we need. Of course, we need to carefully select what technology can play a role. But last but not least, we need money. Citizen science doesn't typically come for free. So we need to bring all these dimensions together in a careful process. And in our work, we have seen that it's all about thinking about how we're setting this up. We've made very good advances with actually developing the co-design methodologies, where we're trying to bring many stakeholders' perspectives together that actually help us to take on board their motivations, the different impacts that they're aiming for, and how we can accommodate them in our citizen science initiatives. And as I've said, with citizen science, we can really generate quite diverse results and impacts. So we need to carefully think about how we actually run a citizen science initiative such that it achieves its impact. So we are arguing for co-designing for impact. Now, that's all very well, but the field of citizen science is also still evolving. In the part of the world where we work on what we call the science of citizen science, where we try to understand how we can do this, how we can do it even better, we realize that still 3 of the main challenges are awareness, acceptability, and sustainability of citizen science. Let me just touch upon them very briefly. Awareness is about the fact that not all citizens are aware that they can actually play a role in monitoring the environment and helping to address environmental issues. And too many authorities, policymakers, etc., are also not aware of what exactly citizen science is and what role it can play in their tasks and responsibility. But once they are aware, the acceptability kicks in, because many people have cautions about the data quality that citizen science is delivering and how it really actually plays a role. And sorry, that was too fast. Sustainability, last but not least, touches back to the point I made earlier about finances. Too many citizen science initiatives are run on a project basis, and that means the money runs out. And it doesn't provide the continuity that we actually need if we want to fully embrace citizen science in water management. There is hope inside. Big Field is working on resources to really help the various stakeholders. I show here the cookbook that we've produced, not with recipes, but actually with different aspects that one deals with when you set up a citizen science initiative. There's also a MOOC that's always open on Future Earth and how citizens can make a difference with citizen science projects to really encourage bottom-up initiatives. And then both for project coordinators of citizen science initiatives, but also for policymakers who try to get an overview of what is the citizen science thing and what impact is it creating anyway. We've recently launched a mix platform where projects on an individual basis can measure the impacts of their specific project, but they can help us generate the overview and get an idea of just how important and salient the impacts of citizen science are. Thank you so much for your attention. If you'd like to have more information, please feel free to get in touch with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uta, for a very comprehensive overview of several activities that you're involved in and leading. So that's quite interesting, and also gives a bit of lessons learned on how to move forward, as well as some bottlenecks and gaps that need to be taken care of. Then I would like to continue and bringing also in the local indigenous knowledge component, which is also highlighted in IHP 9 as one of the components that needs to be brought into citizen science. So I would like to share some lessons learned from Bolivia. And I would like to invite Magali Garcia to give some feedback on her experiences using citizen science in the Bolivian highlands. Magali, the floor is yours. We can see your presentation, but we can't hear you yet. I'm not sure if you're able to connect. Yeah, I think. So we.
Is it okay now?
Yes, we can hear you, and we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you much.
You can put it in.
I'm going to. Yeah. Is it okay now?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning and thank you. And I would like to start with my presentation. And first of all, I want to say that we are all certain that indigenous knowledge is very important from the social, cultural, and community organization view. But it's also true that the long history of interaction of local communities with their ecosystem may support us for the application of sound and locally coherent water resource management. I'm going to present a very summarized results of 10 years of exchange with local communities in the tropical Andes, but which are part also the several examples globally available to see the need for co-creation for information for water resource management. Just to say where we are located, we are in South America, in the tropical Andes, and we are in between three atmospheric systems, 2 high pressure and 1 low pressure, which brings rainfall only during summer. We are located at 4,000 meters around, so that's why the frost risk is very high during winter, and it's only possible to crop during the summer season. But farmers normally used to wait for a false onset of the rainy season to sow, because they mostly are rain-fed cropping. Okay, under these conditions, so when we started to work with these communities, we found that farmers already felt that there was a breaking point in 1983 for the weather and climate, and they decided to shift from a very diverse and very rustic system and non-commercial, mostly species, to a more commercial and much more water requirements needs from other type of species. According to our models, this will not be possible, but farmers already showed us that they did these schemes. And in fact, we needed to include in our irrigation requirements assessments these shapings and these new distributions. As you can see, they started to look for different types of irrigation systems. But importantly, we needed to consider these new decisions that were extremely important. Another important issue that we can present is that normally most starting from 2000, we presented in 2013 paper where we evaluated several models that forecasted the increase in temperature, of course, and then high reduce in frost days, and more or less equal amount of rainy season or rain in total rains. However, when we talk with farmers, they said that it's not true, that most of the time frost is still there and the rain is not working, as we said. So we started to do this analysis of the frost risk, and we found that, in fact, despite the fact that the temperatures are increasing, the minimum temperatures, and the frost risk is reducing, there are some months, especially during March and April, which are cropping months, that at least the frost risk has not changed, and even it could be increasing. And this is very important because if we see also the rainy season has, as farmers said, has almost moved about 2 months. Earlier I presented there was this false onset that we call it. It's not present anymore. In red you can see the present, the last 20 years average, and the rainfall is concentrated in January, February, and then it stops. And that's why the frost risk is again strong, is still strong in March and April. So under these conditions, we thought that we needed to produce more data. We worked with ERA 5 for temperatures estimation, but as you see, the estimation for maximum temperatures was very, very bad, about 15 degrees of overestimation. And in the minimum temperatures, the frost risk was very badly estimated. So at the end, we needed to work again with farmers. And the problem is that farmers cannot move the cropping periods because, as we saw previously, the frost risk increased in March, April as normal as before, as last century. And that's why farmers are already looking for short season crops, which need more water, and also including frost alleviating products. Okay. I will present the third example of how important is local knowledge and local decisions. As you know, the La Nina event is occurring in 3 years in a row, which is very atypical. And we normally during La Nina year, we expect very wet conditions. As we can see in 2021, farmers forecasted in June, because they observe hoarfrost and snow in June, to forecast if it's going to be a good or bad year, and they forecasted El Niño-like year. So we said, no, it's not true because it's going to be a La Niña year. Unfortunately, the onset was extremely late, and there were a lot of frosts, and at the end it was El Niño-like year. In 2021, it was a regular year. That was a coincidence between monitors and farmers. But this year, farmers again forecasted a El Niño-like year. And so far, we are already in November, we have no onset. So monitors said that the year could be wet, but it's not true. And here I can show you that most indicators in green were corrected during the year 2020-2021. Only the orange ones these are local indicators from farmers. And we also can see from the International Center of Observation for the El Niño phenomenon that the more or less the same uncertainty was observed even more in November than what was projected for farmers, by farmers. So it's very important to consider to integrate both observations. So if we want to produce an integrated and validated present socioproductive system, to model them for the future, we really need to include the information from the actual historical and socioproductive system and the land use context, even further than our models. We need to project our climatic, as we saw, it's important to consider what farmers observe and the trends in land use. And we might more or less be certain that our models will produce actual well-respondent to local climate and hydrological conditions systems. Here, I just want to show that in the hydrological model, there are several steps where we can use local information, local decision, not only local information, local decisions which are beyond our decision. In conclusion, I would like to say that under the actual crisis, which requires as much information as possible, it's very important to co-create knowledge with local actors. I showed you that our models can be very wrong and or overestimate information. It's very important to consider that information for historical rains and extremes, temperature trends, local forecasts for next rainy season, trends in land use, water needs for irrigation, etc., in relation to the social local arrangements can be integrated and must be integrated for models for our watershed management. It's important also to validate the constructed or downloaded records when we work with satellite information, for instance, and it's very feasible to do it with farmers. And I really hope this presentation was useful and I took the correct amount of time. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you so much, for also giving the perspective of bringing in local and indigenous knowledge into the planning process, and also connecting to what Uta says is like part of the whole process, not just the data collection, but also the planning and implementation. So thank you so much for that example.
Thank you.
Yes, we might just have a few more questions if time allows just after the presentations, but we want to just first go to the last presentation on case studies, and we would like to invite Bonani Madikizela from South Africa. She's working at the Water Research Commission, and she will present on behalf of the IHP National Committee from South Africa. Bonani, the floor is yours. We can see your presentation, but we can't hear you yet.
Okay, right. It's a matter of buttons. Thank you very much. I'm glad you can see the presentation. Let me put it on PowerPoint.
Yes, please. Full screen.
Okay, there you are. Good day, colleagues all over the world. Bonani Madikizela from Water Research Commission, presenting on behalf of the team from South Africa to this COP27. Yes, thanks for the presentation and the opportunity. Very interesting presentations. In South Africa, colleagues, you can either walk across the river and kick stones, or tomorrow you've got floods. This is how bad the situation is. We do monitor from sites, rivers, groundwater sites, and we monitor at the landscape level. Very interesting is the idea of citizen science. I think this has been well covered. I like the UNESCO definition very much because it says there must be a concern. This answers the question, why would you expect the citizens to continue being involved? Someone talk about money. It's definitely has got something to do also with the concern. They need an answer. So we are publishing in this space as well. In the country, we have a huge challenge around the water security and livelihood. I won't go into all of that, but what is very evident to us is that all our water resource types are not safe, highly polluted, and threatened, as you can see. Some of the citizens rely heavily on groundwater, as you can see that. We try to address as many SDGs as possible. We have focused on empowering citizens by developing tools because we want them to be able to participate with the credible data that they can take the polluter to court and challenge scientifically and legally. So we've been developing a number of tools. We started way back 1994, but the actual launch of the tools like that of MINICES, we call it South African Scoring System, which was founded from South African Scoring System version 4 and 5. So we've been doing this and improving the tools so that they are suitable for citizens, and it's being applied very well across the globe, as I will show you now. We measure flows, we measure E. coli, we measure wind speed, which is a current project now, where we had HP 2000 that we are trying to verify what the citizen scientists can collect with simple data, or simple tools. Same applies for rainfall. We are calibrating that or validating that against the rain gauge that you know. TBDT, we have done that calibration as well with NTUs, MINICES. As I said, we are doing a lot of that. The focus at the moment is very much on developing climate and early warning signs, tools, because of the threat I mentioned earlier of droughts and floods in the country and in the region. We are definitely moving very fast into groundwater tools development, which I'll show you now. Yes, there's a lot that still needs to be done. Colleagues have covered the issue of standardization, extensive training, quality control and assurance. We need more tools on air quality and chemical, as some of my colleagues have already said so. This is groundwater team that farmers, I'm very happy with the last presentation that talked to farmers. We also talked to farmers, and these colleagues are being part of the monitoring. They have got tools now, not as cheap. As someone said, we need cheap tools. Yes, fully agree, we need to do that. But this is the challenge we have. We have to produce these cheap tools and attract as many citizens to monitor their own water resources and avoid the disasters. The slides and videos will be available later. We're also looking at the citizen science, taking their own vulnerability and safety to climate change into their own hands. As I said, we are developing the tools using already approved meteorological tools, HP 2000, and verifying this with the local produced tools so that we get quality data. And leading us here is South African Weather Services with quality data, and we don't want to go wrong. So we are in the process of doing the second phase now of this study. Citizen science, as I said, it goes broader than just the stream or a little groundwater spot, but we're looking at the biosphere, a landscape. I'm very happy with the presentation as well of the Andes. You're looking at the landscape and you can actually see the complexity of what you're talking about, because the human being and livelihood is actually made of all the issues around him or her. So we monitor biospheres as well. Citizen science implementation is everybody's business. Nobody is safe, can stand away and say, this is not part of me. It's our business, all of us. So we use environment or NGOs. We use a lot of government officials in this exercise. The local farmers, as mentioned, schools and everybody else. The NGOs are very much in the forefront, and we hope that we'll get this much better with them because we launched already in 2010 as government, but there were hiccups. So we are now looking at NGOs, but in partnership with government because we need law. We have indeed tested these tools across the SADC region in Africa, and we have moved and tested them all over in many countries in Europe, Canada, South Korea as well, and Australia and New Zealand. Yes, we have got the whole support of legislation in terms of the constitution that requires a healthy environment for the people, and indeed Biodiversity and National Water Act and many other pieces of legislation. However, our pollution levels are still very high. You saw the very first graph that I gave you. The citizen science is not safe from challenges. We have issues of uptake by the government and funding. Citizen Science Society, we hope, will change this picture. We are forming that now in the country and see a national coverage much better than what we have at the moment. The other stuff that we are dealing with seriously is the involvement of youth. We need to generate that data, as my colleagues have already said. The SDG team, UNFCCC, is calling for this, especially SDG number 6. We work with the World Water Quality Alliance. We work with the Earth Watch globally. All these are saying, let's get this data going, and we are just doing that. Finally, I would like to say, if we don't love nature, then the nature will hit back. And the way the floods are also taking their place to clean up and sort out themselves, the environment is an indication of that. We just have to love nature. If we care for nature, it will care for us for sure and provides us with those free services. We have videos that you can watch after this presentation available from those links. I did not have the groundwater video, but you saw something on the slides that will be shared with you by the panel, the organizers of the conference. And these are my colleagues who contributed in the presentation of this work. I want to thank you very much for your participation, listening, and coming questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bonani, and also on behalf of the whole team from South Africa, including my colleagues in the Johannesburg office. So then I think we can go for 1 or 2 questions before we have to close the session. We just had a question from one of the participants asking what is the difference between citizen science and integrated water management. And I see Uta could maybe give us some feedback on that. Uta, if you're still there.
Yes, I am. Hope you can hear and see me. I think it's a really interesting question, and of course, IWM has been a really important concept to help the water sector to bring the stakeholders together. And now, depending on which definition we use, we may say it's still fairly normative. It's asking for a coordinated approach to water management, whereas citizen science is the case that at least I try to make. It comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes, and it can be driven by scientists. It can be driven bottom up. It can be even initiated by water authorities. We see that increasingly. So it doesn't come with so much of a prescription of who's in charge. Now, citizen science is actually not new. In fact, you could argue that science has always been citizen-based, and you know, we've come up with all kinds of societal structures to now that we now need to call it new. It's new because it's gaining attention because of the diffusion of advanced ICTs, but the impetus is there also, certainly from the UNESCO recommendation, is the realization that there is no way we can achieve the SDGs unless we improve the knowledge base, the data base on which we base our decisions and how we change behavior. And so the recommendation on open science by UNESCO really puts citizen science and other forms of open engagement of societal actors really front and center to really opening up the scientific process so that we have the scientific basis to transitioning to a sustainable world.
So much, Uta, and I have two questions on youth, and I will start with one online, and we also have a participant here in the room who would like to raise the question. So one question we have from online is how to get support for citizen science projects for youth, and this is coming from a colleague from Ukraine, who is an NGO on rivers of, sorry for not being able to pronounce the name of the river, I think it's Khmelnytsky. And maybe just also the colleague from here, who is from the youth representative, if you can also ask your question, which I think is related. Yes, please, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Pablo Navas from Guatemala. I'm a proud member of this new network. It's called Groundwater Your Network, created by UNESCO. We are 850 people from the world. I'm the chair of the partnership committee. In my committee, we are 65 people, like 65 people from the world. I'm in charge of that committee. And I'm here because I want to tell about our work, about this new network. I know how important is the groundwater for not only for my country, for the humanity. So that's why I'm here. This is, can you show, please? And you can follow us in the camera, and you can follow us in Twitter, like Groundwater Your Network, and in LinkedIn too. I would like to share the link for if you want to join us, you are welcome. So that's it.
Okay.
We have too many ideas. We want to make a new things, you know, because we are young people. I don't think I'm young because I have 31 years old, but that's it. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And so I think it's a bit about the same question: how can youth engage in citizen science project? And I think was already a few examples given. I'm not sure if some of the panelists would like to reflect on that. Maybe also making the link with groundwater as well as river monitoring. Any specific ideas how people who would like to set up new citizen science monitoring projects could get started? Who would like to answer that? Let's see, Bonani, maybe you want to answer?
I can try that. In South Africa and in the region, we have engaged schools. In fact, we can now tell you how many of the schools are out there and how many are closest to a river. And we then engage the school and principal and the public in the monitoring. So we provide sampling tools, the cheapest ones that they can use in the biological monitoring. In the groundwater, again, we work with farmers and youth, because youth is getting more and more involved in agriculture, and they also need to know what is coming their way in terms of water security and availability. So based on the risk that the community is facing, they get involved because they now understand why they should be doing this monitoring. So I think those are some of the examples we use in the country. And when we use the biosphere, again, we use youth. And of course, there are some incentives here that come from the Department of Environment and Forestry. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And I also see Magali wants to come in, please.
Thank you. For us, it's very important, the involvement of youth, and we're extremely worried because I showed you, it was a very fast slide, but we showed you that local indicators, local knowledge is very important, and is quite accurate. That's the most important. And yeah, in other presentations, I show why it is accurate. It's not only because it's observation of culture, but the problem is that this knowledge is not being transmitted to youth. I mean, due to different socioeconomic problems, migration, even scholarization. I mean, education is a great goal, but at the same time, it keeps children away from the observations, and then they cannot learn how, or if the frost of the very next day. And for us, the youth movement should be encouraged, and in different ways, especially in the ways that we need to learn how to respect nature, how to observe nature, especially if we are in areas where we produce food and we are talking about the number 1 and 2 SDGs. I cannot respond how they can get involved, but I can suggest that it's very important to transmit it to the new generation from very early ages, all this information that it's very valid. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. And I think we can close then the session, since we're almost at the end of the hour, with some closing remarks from Gert Verreet, and he was representative from the Flemish government. So Gert, I would like to give the floor to you to just collect a few of these lessons learned and maybe give some feedback on how Flemish is also supporting citizen science so far. Thank you so much.
Hi. Yes, well, it's an interesting session. Of course, we are honored as Belgium to chair this working group on scientific research, where we take a lead on the output on use of citizen science, and we will take this very seriously. I think from our perspective, citizen science has seen renewed attention in our context, mainly as part of what we call the STEM agenda, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics agenda, to bring youth more up to speed with competences that they might need in their job. As part of the science and that STEM agenda, we have quite an extensive network in Flanders of professionals across the board on citizen science as such. And actually tomorrow we have a network day of the Flemish citizen science community. Also at the European level, I think we see a resurgence of interest for citizen science, not just because the framework program is very much focusing on open science, but basically in the mission specifically dedicated to water, on ocean and waters, there is a strong drive for citizen engagement, and also there is a specific action on citizen science at the level of the European research area, which is dealing with plastic pirates. It's basically upscaling a German initiative across Europe to engage youth in monitoring the litter near rivers. And this will certainly be also an important learning experience for citizen science at the European level. Now, what I've heard from this session is that there are great opportunities for citizen science because of the technologies, the communication, data treatment, the motives of interested people. I mean, we have to build with interested actors, and the urgency, of course, that all of us are, in a way, we become responsible for our own environment, and we want to live in a climate resilient environment. So basically that ties in with livelihood issues and becoming responsible for some of the state of the environment. But that has a downside as well. The threat is, of course, that if we engage with citizens in citizen science projects, these people can find new phenomena. They will, of course, need the opportunity also then to communicate with people who can do something about it. So having citizen science in its box would be a difficult situation, and you might have conflicts. So there are other threats to citizen science that I heard about. The sustainability requires sustained resources, and the complexity of undertaking science with citizens is bigger than just doing it on your own. Now, of course, science, it's not just citizen science that works with people. Science is also an endeavor from people, and we live in a time where science has become alien to many people, and that we even question the license to operate of scientists, and that there is some hostility to science. In a world where conspiracy theories can come up with anything, I think we can say clearly that making the real science more transparent is in everybody's interest, and open science clearly demonstrate that science can always be challenged, unlike conspiracy theories. Finally, it is about empowering people in different, from youth onwards, in school, outside of school, engaged adults, citizens all around it. And citizen science is clearly has multiple benefits for many actors, but we need to think very clearly how it is positioned in everything that happens around water management, and it should certainly not be used as a diversion tactic by people in power to keep people busy whilst they're doing something that is wrong for the water system. Thank you very much for a very interesting session this afternoon, and you will have our full support in the future.
Thank you so much, Gert, for those enlightening words, and also for making a bit of the connection with some of the ongoing processes also at European level. Thank you so much to all, and I hope also you had a very good session. We enjoyed it as well. So thanks so much, and we look forward to future activities of the Citizen Science Working Group, which will start now very shortly as part of the IHP working groups. So please also make sure if you're interested to be part of that working group, which is open-ended, anybody can join, and we would like to work together on that. Thanks so much, and we hope to see you in the next occasion. Bye. Thank you.